Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Miranda Ackley on the podcast. She's an NPC women's physique competitor. She's also a fitness model, and she's coming to us all the way from Rhode Island. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Miranda, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So before we get started, and I ask usually the first question that I ask all my health and fitness guests, I told you that I have a special connection to Rhode Island, which is why when I saw that that's where you live, I was a little bit more happier than I normally would be for other guests because I don't know if you know who this is, but Roger Williams is one of the guys that really helped with the founding of Rhode Island. He was the guy that came up with the name for Providence. I believe if I look back, and I'm a descendant of his, so we did our family tree, and it goes all the way back. So the guy that really discovered the land of Rhode Island, and so he was like their first mayor or something like that. I don't know. I'll have to look into it a little bit more. But whenever I hear Rhode Island, I think they named a college after him, and there's a lot of street names after him. But I always think of whenever we hear people from Rhode Island, it's like, oh yeah, I'm related to the guy that was basically the founder of that place, at least for the colonization. So that's just a cool fact about me. But moving on to you. So what really inspired you to make that change and adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle?
I'll be honest. I want to say my very first inspiration was Nicole Wilkins. And this was all the way back in my high school days. So this was about 7 or 8 years ago. I was a pretty tall, lanky, athletic type. I discovered the weight room. And so me and a group of friends, we would go in the summertime and go into the weight room. And I really didn't know what I was doing, but I tried basically every machine just to see what it would do. And I really just kind of felt very comfortable lifting weights and being in the gym. In high school, I played basketball. Wasn't the greatest. I would consider myself a bench warmer, but I tried. So I kind of would skip basketball practice and just kind of hide out in the weight room just because I enjoyed it a lot more. But of course, obviously, my nutrition back then was cherry Pepsi and Pop Tarts, so I didn't necessarily have the greatest muscle growth back then. But yeah, I would say definitely from social media, I would say Nicole Wilkins and Dana Lynn Bailey were my first, I would say, inspirations. But at that point, I wasn't considering competing. I was actually just considering the fitness model route. So then I was like, okay, I'll, become more, how do you say, physically appealing, but a little bit more muscular. And I'll just try that route. Fast forward about 3 or 4 years. I finally had a couple gym memberships, and I knew people who were bodybuilders and competed and everything like that. And then I just dipped my toes into that water and just started off from there. And then I was just really into competing, and I enjoy it.
And that's so awesome. And I gotta say, I'm 6'3" myself, so I understand the tall people struggles when it comes to working out and all of that stuff that entails. I mean, they don't talk about it as much. People don't, because one of the things that I did discover when talking to all these health and fitness people is that a lot of them are actually on the shorter end. So when
Yeah.
when you get to some of these taller people on, I really enjoy it because they kind of understand the similar struggles. But when you were getting started in the gym, I mean, really taking things seriously, I always love to say, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there are 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, I mean, what exercises they do. So many things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you when you were getting started? Because I always love to say also, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what did you train for this body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them is not going to work as good for you.
Honestly, even when I got into the gym, I still really did not know what I was doing. I mean, I knew people who competed. I knew a couple females who competed. So, I mean, I would kind of ask them for pointers, but at the same time, I'm kind of an introvert. So I didn't really talk to a lot of people in the gym. I don't want to bother them or be that person who's going up to them and asking them for advice. But honestly, YouTube was my best friend and Instagram was my best friend. And I honestly I got a lot of my inspiration from a lot of classic bodybuilders, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno. I just honestly watched them work out, and I took it from there, and that's when I really began to see a lot of progress.
Yeah, and that's just so awesome. It just shows like how the technology has really, really helped people when it comes to, just realizing what they're able to accomplish and how to maintain that look and how to just get in shape. I mean, there's so many positive things that go along with that. And you mentioned it before, and I was gonna mention it, but I cannot just tell you how much I missed having that old high school metabolism, like you were talking about, of eating those, those drinks, and then having Pop Tarts all the time, and still not gaining any real weight, and still being like
Yeah,
super. I mean, believe me, I would give anything just for one more day where I could just go and pig out and just not. I mean, I'm 24, so I'm still on the. I'm still on the the part where I can still get away with eating a lot more than I probably will be able to get away with 5 years from now. But it's still recognizable. Where I was like, oh, if I could go back to being like 17, 18, and just being able to just eat whatever I wanted and not have to care about it. So yeah, I start drooling whenever people start saying that, just because I just think about those days, just getting hamburgers and all the time,
yeah,
and just yeah,
yeah.
don't
It's ridiculous.
yep.
Back in high school, like it was funny because back then I had this self image that I was fat, and that like I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna work out and I'm gonna tone up. So I was one of those people who's like, oh, I'm just gonna touch the weights to tone up. But like I always had this self image of myself that I was fat. But it's like I go back and look at pictures and I'm like as skinny as a freaking pole. I'm like, where was I getting that from? And it's not like anyone was telling me that I was fat. Everyone was always telling me, no, no, you look good, you're thin, everything like that. But it's like, yes, I definitely miss the days of drinking copious amounts of pop and eating Pop Tarts and pizzas and not gaining any weight. And now it's like, if I give myself a cheat day, it's like, oh, I went up like 5 pounds. And then I'm like, well, that's not going to happen for a while.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you really, especially as you get older, I think I just wish I would have enjoyed it a little bit more when I was younger. But you did mention that, like when you wanted to go to the gym, you just wanted to tone up. And that brings me into the myth that I love to bust. Every single podcast I'll ask this to every single guest, because it has gotten better the last 5 years with Instagram, but there's still a significant amount of women
Yeah.
that still have that fear where if they walk into the gym and they touch one weight, they're just gonna hulk out, put on 50 pounds of muscle. And like I was telling you before we started recording this podcast, like I always say to that, I would, predict that they would probably be the first ever trillionaire. Everyone would flock to them and want to know their secret. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? Because we hear so many times, like that word, I hate it so much, tone, because it's not even, let's be honest, like that's not a real thing. It's just,
Yeah.
it's, if there's one thing that I could erase from the health and fitness industry, it'd be the word tone, because
Yes.
everybody and their brother tries to use it to try to describe, oh, I just want to be toned. It's like, no, you want to be lean. That's basically what you're saying. So yeah, but did you have that fear at all when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, I bet you hear that all the time now. How do you like to respond to that?
Honestly, even from the very beginning, I liked the look of females who had more muscle. So once I really started getting into like knowing what I was doing in my workouts and knowing a little bit more nutrition wise, I never used the word tone. I always used the word I want to get big. So I was definitely the complete opposite of that. And it's like I do still see people say, oh, I just want to tone up or I just want to lose a couple pounds. And I'm like, well, I know you're doing the copious amounts of cardio, but cardio is not the only thing that's going to help you. You're going to need to lift weights. And I always say to them, because when you're lifting weights, you actually are going to burn more calories than you are with cardio. And
Yeah.
your body's going to use up more of those nutrients that you're taking in during the day. But for me, I I honestly was never scared of getting too big because I knew that that's going to take a few years to put on size. Like adding muscle takes a lot longer than people think it does. It's not like, oh, I worked out for a whole week and I gained 10 pounds of muscle. I wish it was that way, but it's not. So it's like I've been working out for, yeah, 7 or 8 years now, and it's taken that long to be the way I am.
Oh, absolutely. I always say that, and like if I can bust that myth every podcast, that's why I do it. But I also always love to tell the story of when I was getting in better shape, in college. I had one of my friends come up to me and she said, Ryan, I see that you're getting in, better shape. I want to go to the gym with you, but I'm just afraid that I'm going to get too bulky. And I told her, I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs or when we go out to get something to eat weighs more than 90% of the dumbbells in the gym. Now, she had a very heavy purse. I don't know if she had like a dead body in there or what she had in there, but she had an extremely heavy purse. So I just told her that, and then she just realized, like, oh, hey, yeah, that's true. And then she went to the gym, and then she started, and then just the confidence boost that she gave. And that's one of those things that I love to talk about as well, because I always feel that for women especially, that confidence boost is so much more important than I think it is for guys, because there's some guys, like there could be a 400-pound guy who walks to the gym and acts like he owns the place. But I mean, for women especially, that confidence boost is one thing that you can take from the gym and use it in every single aspect of your life. How are you able to take that confidence boost that you get from working out and use it to help other things in your life?
Oh, I mean, honestly, I would just say in like my everyday life, going out into the public, I just feel more comfortable. It's like, I know it's going to sound stupid, but it's like I wear whatever I want. And it's like I don't have this perception in my mind, like, oh, I'm fat. So like other people are going to look at me and say that I'm fat or like see that I'm fat. It's like I enjoy being what you would consider a bigger, more muscular female. And it's like people all the time notice it right away and they'll immediately say, they're like, oh, are you a bodybuilder? And I'll just say, yes, I am. Just because I will say normal people don't necessarily know the difference between physique and bodybuilder. So I just say I'm a bodybuilder because at the end of the day, I do the same things that bodybuilders do. Um, but I would say with confidence, especially when I get deeper into prep and I do shed more of the weight and I do start to see more of the muscle and less of the cheeseburgers and french fries that I enjoyed in the off season, I definitely become more confident because I just feel better. I mean, just health wise, weight wise, and it's like I like what I see, and so it's like on the outside I feel good, so on the inside I feel good.
Absolutely. And I always tell people, just find that one thing that really, you just really enjoy like that and really gives you that confidence and hold on to it. I mean, we're on this planet for such a short amount of time that just find that and just go with it. But that brings me into one of the questions that, I mean, it's probably my favorite question to ask because everyone's genetics are so differently. So what is one body part when you started training that really took off? And what was one body part that you really had to train to overdrive because it was lagging behind? I mean, I'll give you my example. So my back, I mean, I had jobs all throughout college where, I was usually like loading trucks or, working in warehouses. So, my back is the one thing I always say that looks like I can compete, no matter what, just because I've had all those years of just getting the crap kicked out of it basically at work. But
Yeah.
also being 6'3", my legs and my lower body are just shot where I have to train them, twice a week at the minimum, basically, to get them to look any semblance like I work out legs at all, which I hate. I mean, I'm one of those people that's not genetically blessed with nice calves, just all that type of stuff where it's, I mean, I had that pitcher's body, so, I was a little bit long and lengthy. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Well, immediately right away, and I know most people would love it, but my legs grow so quickly that my coach and I decided that I should only really be training legs once a week. But oh, it's me, so it's me. I have to go against his wishes and training legs twice a week just because it makes me feel better. So my legs grow really quick. Um, the body part that took quite a while for me to grow or to improve on and is still an issue for me, I would definitely say are my lats. My lats do not want to grow at all. Now, when it comes to working back, like the rest of it looks pretty decent, but when it comes to my lats, they will not grow for the life of me. So I would definitely have to say my lats and triceps are my two weakest points, I would have to say, but my legs definitely take off no matter what.
I always say everyone too, the unsung hero, especially for good arms. If there's any advice I give out there, is make sure that you work your tries because that makes your arms look so much bigger. You could have the best buys in the world, but if you don't have good tries, it doesn't look anything like it. I
Yeah,
mean, that adds to the illusion. So I've never given that advice on this because I've never really had the chance to. But yeah, again, everyone, make sure that you're working your tries. Don't be that one guy that just curls all the time and then is just like, oh, look, I'm huge. It's like, no, you're
yeah.
not because we can't see that. So yeah, that's the one piece of advice. But what exercises do you try to do to help the lats really grow then? Because there only are a few specific exercises that target the lats really as the main body group.
I just do a crap ton of wide grip lat pull downs, honestly. And then I'll try to switch up my grip and
Hmm.
put my hands towards me instead of away from me.
Yep.
Those are the two movements I feel work my lats the best, and I get the best stretch out of those movements and the best contraction. I mean, like you said, everyone's different. No one responds the same to a cookie cutter workout.
Is it difficult because, like you said, if your back is really, really good though, and then you have your lats, is it hard to really try to isolate those and not just develop like a super huge back and then just have like a little, like a not as big lats, then just walk around with
Yeah.
a huge back? Yeah. So was that, has that been a struggle for you to sort of find out what works best that way?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I try to split up my back workouts. So it's like one day I'm really just going to focus on like a back width day. So then I'll really just try to isolate my lats. I'll do a couple movements to work the rest just so I get the blood flowing. But then the second back day, I really just focus on working like the middle and the lower of my back. I mean, there are days where I do go to work back, and it is hard for me to really feel the movement and feel the isolation of working a lot just because I'm still somewhat working on that mind muscle connection. But I mean, I do have to say my lats definitely have grown a little bit since the beginning, but they definitely still need improvement, I think.
Well, that's just so awesome because we hear just such a wide variety of answers, which is why I love to ask that question. But what was your first experience with bodybuilding? I mean, how did you get, how were you made aware of that? Was it something that you were aware of even before you started working out? Or was it one of those things where you just started working out and then people just asked like if you competed and then you're just like, oh, maybe I'll look into this? But what is your backstory with bodybuilding?
Oh, okay. Well, the gym I was going to, I knew about a handful of competitors. A couple people did like a men's physique, a couple people did bodybuilding, and there was one female who did women's physique. And I did kind of see her go through a journey of getting ready for a show. And I just kind of asked her questions here and there. But then one of the people I knew of in the gym, they decided to do their very first show, and they did really well. And they came back, and I asked them, I was like, so how was it? Like, what was your experience? And they told me about it. And they're like, they're like, you look like you have pretty good genetics. They're like, you should just go for it. Just try a show. Just do one. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to do it again. So then I finally broke down. I was like, okay, I'm just going to do a show. I'm going to go for it. So I pretty much did, I want to say it was only like 16 weeks of dieting, which I probably could have used more because my first show, I still, oh, it's so terrible. And I realize everyone starts somewhere, but I came in very flat. I came in very watery. My legs weren't defined at all. I mean, really, the only thing that was, I would say, somewhat okay were like the top portion of my abs, and I would say my upper body. So I definitely did not have dieting down correctly. I didn't have cardio down correctly. And it every prep is different. Every prep came with a different approach, and I will say every prep definitely progressed in a positive way from the first show.
And what has your experience been like with prep? Because like you said, it's progressed, but I always say just to be able to get into shape to go on a prep takes so much hard work and dedication that the average person would never understand. But going on a prep, I mean, you are notching things up to an extreme level where it comes down to your cardio. You have to get all of your workouts done. I mean, you have to eat the right amount of food at the right amount of time. I mean, you're basically just becoming a scientist, basically just trying to calculate everything that works best for you. I mean, it is just so intense that so many people aren't aware of it. Was that a struggle for you at first? And like you said, things have gotten easier. How have you made them get easier over time? Is it just gone along with the experience, or is it just you just found simpler ways to how to make it a little bit more less stressful on yourself?
Absolutely. In the very beginning, it definitely was a struggle for me. I mean, it was something I wanted to do. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stick to my plan. I'm going to do what I need to do. But in the very beginning, I was not as disciplined as I am now and be like, oh, well, I'm going to a birthday party this weekend. So I'm just going to enjoy maybe like a cheeseburger and like a piece of cake. And it'll be okay because I will work it off the next day when I do cardio. But back then, I didn't necessarily have the grasp on no, that's not how it works. You're going to eat that junk food, and it's not like your body's going to use it up right away. It's more than likely going to store it as fat somewhere, and it's going to put you further behind than where you should be going. I would definitely say every prep has been different, trial and error for sure. In the very beginning, I didn't have a coach. Um, I've actually only been working with the coach I am. I've only been working with the coach that I have, I would say, for about a year and a half now. I definitely recommend getting a coach because they will keep you way more accountable. You have to do those weekly check ins, and it just takes the thinking out of everything for you, having someone put together the meal plan, and you're having a third set of eyes on you, so it's like you aren't being so critical of yourself 24/7 like we tend to be. And it's nice to have that support where it's like you could feel fat and bloated that day, but then you speak to your coach and they're like, you're not fat and bloated, you're just holding a little bit of water, it'll be gone by tomorrow. Be like, you just think it's the end of the world, but in reality it's not. Um, I mean, I really don't have like any tricks that I've used in preps. I mean, I just kind of sucked it up and went along with it because I'm like, this is what I have to do. So I'm going to complain a little bit, but I'm not going to complain a whole lot because I'm the one doing this to myself.
Yeah, and it's just so important to just realize, just the light at the end of the tunnel too. I mean, a lot of people, they just don't see that, like, oh, I only have to do this for just a certain amount of time, and the results, they'll speak well for themselves. But I mean, as you can see, I'm one of the palest people you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, being from the upper Midwest, like you said, you were originally from Iowa, so you can
Yeah,
understand, the limited amount of sunlight that you normally get, and how, a lot of people there, they get farmer's tans, they don't get tan at all, or they just get burnt to an
yeah.
absolute crisp, which is me. So I always love to ask all the competitors that I've had on, what is that experience like for you when you get that tan on and see, all those muscles pop out, and you see even muscles that you never even knew that you ever had? What is that feeling like for you when you finally get that tan on and you see like all of that hard work really come to fruition?
I was an absolute shock the very first time. Like, I have heard stories and I've seen people compete, and I'm like, oh, that's not so bad. But then when I finally had it happen to me, and I woke up that next day on competition day and the tan had darkened overnight, I was just like, holy crap. I I'm like, I look ridiculous, but at the same time, I like absolutely loved it. So I'm probably one of those weird people who likes to get competition tans just because I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, you can see all the definition, you can see all the veins, you can see things that you didn't see 24 hours ago when you were a pasty pale cookie. So uh the very first time I got the spray tan, I definitely do have to say I think I had the lady go a little too dark because I definitely was a completely different shade than everyone else. But I was like, trial and error, you never know. Because I was told when you're on stage, the darker the tan, the better. So I'm like, okay, darken me up, make me as dark as you can, because I was thinking if you're darker, you're gonna look better. Um, yeah, the very first time I got the tan, I was just like, holy crap. And it even shocked my mom because I will call her my competition travel buddy. She's been to every competition and she's kind of like, you know, my person who carries my meals or helps me check in and, helps me take care of the butt tape on the competition suits if I need it. So she was just like shocked as well. She was like, I've never seen a spray tan so dark in my life. But obviously every competition is different. Every person who applies the spray tan is different. Um, so it's like I would have to say every competition I've done, my spray tan has gotten better and better. And you definitely learn how to take care of it. And you learn that you're not able to wash your hands, or if you get it wet anywhere, it's going to show up. But majority of the time, they can buffer that out and take care of it. So
That is one of the reasons why I love to ask this question, because I mean, so many people don't realize that you basically have to become a statue for that amount of time that you have it on. You can't really sit on anything, you can't really touch anything. So yeah, that even adds
can't
more.
sweat, shouldn't be sweating
Yep.
because it'll immediately run.
Yep. So that even adds more to just what these people have to go through, not just their training alone, but the final end product. And it's just, yeah, it's just so unsung, I think, because not that many people just know just how hard that can be. But probably the number one thing that I was shocked to learn when I got started with this podcast. I mean, I would have never guessed this in a million years, and I don't think the general public would have never guessed this in a million years. But for so many of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than the working out. I mean, I always like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser, because it's always ever evolving, and it's not really anything that you can just do perfectly, just because there's so many things that go into it. But what has your experience with posing been like, and how has it evolved over time?
Oh, when I very first started, I mean, like I said, I was asking my friend who was a women's physique competitor, and I was asking her because in Iowa, honestly, there are not that many people who compete. So it's like, I'm going to use my resources that are right here. So when I very first started posing, I was terrible at it. And she would be like, oh, you got to stand this way. You got to point your feet out, this way. So that way your quads pop. And she's like, and you got to bring your arms out. That way you can get your lats to spread and like really stretch your torso and look lean. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea what you're freaking talking about. And then I was like going through the movements with her, and I was like a robot. I was not relaxed. I was not comfortable. I just didn't have that mind muscle connection to get my body to do what it needed to do for those mandatory poses to look correct. But like they say, practice makes perfect. Practicing posing in the off season, practicing posing while you're going through prep, doing your poses while you're doing your check-in pictures. I mean, you will eventually get better, and it's simple. Just ask for criticism from someone who knows what they're talking about. And it's be like, when I was going through my last prep, my coach and I were going through posing, and I was asking him, be like, should I have my shoulder kind of rolled forward a little bit? Where should I be placing this hand? That way it's not necessarily in the way of like showing off what I need to show off. And, he's like, no, you're perfect. Your posing is perfect. You just have to become comfortable with it. And honestly, I am very comfortable with posing. And it's funny because when I'm not on stage, posing, I kind of overthink it a little too much. But once I hit that stage and I'm in that prejudging, doing those mandatory poses, it just washes over me like a wave. And I am so comfortable and I feel so in my element that it happens, and I don't overthink it. And I like to say I don't make mistakes. I'm sure I make mistakes, but it's like, I feel in my element. So I don't worry about it at that point.
And that's so awesome, because I always like to say most people don't realize that these people, when they're posing, I mean, that's just as much of a workout as most of their average workouts, just with the sweat and just how much wear and tear that
Yes.
can kind of get on the body, just trying to perfect that. But were you always in physique? Did you always do the physique poses, or did you start out at a lower division? What's your experience been like competition wise?
Nope. I went right from crawling right into women's physique. I wasn't like one of those people who's like, oh, I'm just going to do figure and then maybe go into physique. I just jumped right into the deep end. I'm like, you know what? Go big or go home. And I honestly, one of the deciding factors for me in choosing physique is because I didn't want to wear heels on stage and fall. So I was like, I'm going to pick the category where I'm barefoot. Then there's less of a chance of me of making a mistake in heels. So yeah, I mean, so that kind of was a challenge going from 0 to 60, because I was like, okay, I'm like, I knew right away to be in that division. I'm like, I'm going to have to grow and get bigger. I'm like, the frame I am now may be okay for the couple small shows that I'm doing, but I'm like, I'm definitely going to have to put on good size and be defined if I really want to make it in this division.
And that's awesome, because you might actually, I'm not 100% sure, but that you might be the first person that ever just like went right into physique, because we've had so many people where they like they did the route like you said, where it's like, oh, I'm going to start in figure and then sort of work my
Yeah.
way up. So yeah, like you said, you went right into the deep end. So and that's awesome. But now, what is your favorite physique pose, and what is your least favorite physique pose?
Oh, I have to say my favorite physique pose would be abdominal and thigh. I would feel that is I feel like that's my best pose. And I have to say my least favorite pose would be side tricep.
Yep, that is one that we hear all the time. We actually normally it's like abs and thighs or something, but that's just because that's just a weird pose. But yeah, side tricep. That is actually one of the first times that we've heard that. But yeah, I can see how that can be difficult too because that's just one of those. I mean, it's not like your front double bi. It's not like your back where it's a little bit more
Yeah.
simpler. Where it's one of those where you need to have a lot more sort of motion into it. But now a question that I ask every single guest that I have on, whether they be my bands or they be my health and fitness guest. For my bands, I always ask, what's that feeling like to perform live in front of hundreds to thousands of people, and that also applies to my bodybuilders as well. So what is that feeling like for you when you get to go on stage and show off all of that hard work that you've worked months upon months for?
With prejudging, it's the 2 days before the show. I'm getting a little nervous. I'm kind of relaxed, but yet I'm a little nervous just because in my head I'm doing that mental checklist of did I do this right? Did I do enough cardio? Did I measure my meals out correctly? Did I have enough meals? Did I drink enough water? Am I doing what my coach is telling me I need to be doing? And then in the back of my head, I'm always worried that I'm going to forget my posing suit and then I'm like not going to be able to compete. I don't know why. That's one of my biggest fears. But um, being on stage and finally showing off what I have been working for, it is honestly just a great relief. I feel so comfortable on stage that when I'm doing during the prejudging, I just feel comfortable and it's like I just have this wave of confidence. Um, and they definitely say that confidence shows on stage. So when you're on stage, show that smile, just be confident in your posing and just have fun with it. Just be comfortable with who you are on stage because that definitely helps you present your package so much better. Um, yeah, so prejudging, I definitely feel comfortable. I love what I'm doing. But now, when it comes to the night show and I have to do my 60-second routine, that's a completely different story. I don't know what it is, but no matter how many times I practice a routine to a song, I somehow always freeze up and get stage fright and then forget what I'm supposed to do. So then I just end up winging it. So I'm sure I look very stupid on stage because they're like, this chick doesn't even know what she's doing. So I'm just like throwing poses out there and just like hoping the song ends in the next 10 seconds. But at the same time, at that point, you just have to have fun with it because, the people's minds are made up and it's just another way to show off what you worked for, but it's your time to just have fun with it and do what you want to.
Well, absolutely, and that also goes along with what I was talking about earlier. Where just find that thing that brings you that much joy, and just stick with it. But now one of our fun questions. So, what is your go-to post-show meal?
Oh, that varies. That varies so much. One time it was all you could eat sushi for $30 and I rolled out of there and I honestly thought my stomach was going to burst open. Um, Another time I had a Philly cheesesteak and french fries, but surprisingly it wasn't that good, so it was kind of disappointing. Honestly, I would have to say a nice big bowl of pasta is like my definite go-to. Like I'm talking like 3 or 4 cheese pasta with a little bit of chicken thrown in and some bread. I'm good to go.
That is the first time that we've heard pasta on this podcast. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting. Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that I haven't heard that enough either. Normally it's just like burgers and fries, and like I always say, if I ever competed in a bodybuilding show afterwards, I would just rent out a Five Guys for the night, and I just walk in there with $1,000 and say, hey, I'm buying you out for the night. Here's 3 things are gonna happen. I'm either gonna die, I'm gonna pass out, or I'm gonna throw up. But either way, I'm getting my money's worth of food. Just feed me until one of those 3 things happen. But yeah, just that. What is that also that tastes like? Because if you've gone months upon months without eating, anything that isn't good for you, I mean, that isn't, just super good for you or it really conductive to building muscle, is that just tastes like the best thing in the world after all that time?
Oh, it does. It like is like nothing else. Like you could probably give me a box of macaroni and cheese and I would just be like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing on earth right now," because it's like you've gone so long without having this junk food and you're just like this is a whole nother level of deliciousness and I love it.
Yeah, and I mean that's another reason, if you can just get through that, just to see what that ends up looking like. But yeah, I always also the most important question that I ask on this podcast, because it is not talked about really at all, I don't think, on Instagram as much as it should be, is that I mean, I've had friends come up to me and say, like, "Hey, Ryan, I really enjoy this podcast." But one of the things that they're shocked by is that look that you present on stage, that is not a sustainable look. You're not going to be able to look like that 365 days out of the year. I mean, so many people have that myth where they just think, I think it's because when you look at people like who lose a lot of weight and they're able to maintain that weight that they've lost, and they're still able to, be like that 150 pounds as opposed to 250 pounds. I think that they think that also applies to bodybuilding, where if you get so trimmed down and you look like that there's a way that you can sustain that. But they're just so ill-informed, and a lot of people just don't realize that you're at an unhealthy weight usually, and body fat percentage that you're not going to be able to maintain. I mean, especially for women, but even for guys too. I mean, if you're able to maintain that even like 2 days afterwards, you're very, very lucky. But it's just, you are going to have to put on weight. Was that a struggle for you, and how's that evolved for you? Just realizing that I have worked my butt off months upon months to look like this, but eventually, I am not going to be able to maintain this look.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, I would say for me, my body type, it's like I'm one of those people where I gain weight quickly, I lose weight quickly, I add muscle quickly, I hold water, I don't hold water. It's like I'm definitely one of those wild cards where it's like anything and everything you could throw at me and it's probably going to stick to my bones. Um, I was so happy and so I felt amazing because this last competition that I did in November up in Boston, I actually maintained a really nice lean look for like 2.5 days. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I got my abs to last 2.5 days after my competition. I'm like, that has never happened to me before. Yeah, definitely for me, I am one of those people where I cannot maintain a really lean stage look year round. I mean, I do follow some people on Instagram, on social media, and they are able to maintain a somewhat, I would say, really lean look. But for me, I'm just not one of those people. That does not happen for me. I've had a post show rebound where I gained 20 pounds of water within 4 days. And it's like, it was ridiculous. I was in a lot of pain and I just hated myself and my confidence went from sky high to zero. I mean, so it definitely is very critical how you handle your post show food and intake. I mean, it's okay to go out that night and enjoy yourself, have cheeseburger, have pasta, have pizza, enjoy it. But it's like, you can't eat. I'm just going to say, you can't eat like an asshole for the next couple weeks and expect to not gain weight. I mean, unless you have really freaky, super good genetics, I praise you. I wish I was like that, but unfortunately, I'm not. I'm someone who will gain quite a few pounds the next couple weeks after prep.
I don't praise those people. I hate them with every ounce of fiber that I have in me. I've known a couple of them where they could just eat, 10 Snickers bars a day and they don't gain an ounce of fat. And honestly, I just want to take them to a lab and get their genetics like stored somewhere and then have them like injected into me or something like that, so that some way we could like combine it. Because yeah, I take a look at those people and I'm like, do you realize how lucky you have it? Like and they don't
Yeah.
even realize it either because they're just so
Yeah,
used to
no.
it. Yeah, and they're just like, oh yeah, I can eat whatever I want, and they're like, oh yeah, it's just fine. I was like, I want to punch you in the face so hard right now. Like it's like, dude, come on, yeah.
Or it's like those people who are genetically a little bit leaner and it's like they're getting ready for a show and they're like, oh, I'm only doing 30 minutes of cardio and I get to have a cheat meal every single week. And it's like, oh my God, it's like I've gone like 4 months without a cheat meal and I went up 5 pounds, but you can't help it. I mean, it's like good for them. I'm happy for them because it makes it easier for them. But there are people out there who do have to work a little bit harder, and it definitely is not healthy to be at like a 3% body fat year round. It just, your body's going to give up at some point.
We had one of those people on where she won a bodybuilding show only training body weight exercises. She didn't do any lifting weights. She didn't do anything. She did just body weight exercises. And I said, you know what? First of all, I hate you like so much. But yeah, she looked great too. But it was a bikini competition. So let's be honest. I mean, if you're gonna try to go to a physique competition just doing body weight exercises, good luck with that. I mean, I wish you nothing but the best. But you might not see the best results. But yeah, just seeing that, and I was just like, oh my God, that is just so incredible. But I mean, it's just so important to give that image out there because I think so many people have that struggle when they first compete and then they realize like, hey, what am I doing? Like I'm gaining like you said, like 20 pounds of water weight in a couple of days. I mean, that can be very scary too to a lot of people where they're just like, what is happening to me? So yeah, just that's why I love asking that, just to get that out there to people that you know what, you are going to have to put on weight, and it's one of those things where just enjoy it while it lasts. But yeah, and like I always say, it's just like starting a business. You got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. It's
And
probably
it's like, it's from a mental aspect, you definitely have to be mentally tough to be in this industry, I feel, because with having those up and downs like that with your weight, mentally you can destroy yourself, and you could look at food in a totally completely different way, and it can hurt you. I mean, there were times in some past preps when I didn't have a coach and stuff like that, and I was looking at food very negatively, and then I would I would stick to my meals, but then um, one of the last shows that I did a couple of years ago, I completely binged out on junk food a week before I was supposed to be on stage, just because it is tough. It is tough depriving yourself from that food, but at the same time, you need to teach yourself or have someone else there help you and support you and be like, listen, you cannot look at food as a coping mechanism, as a support, as a type of support. That's not a healthy thing to do. And when you're coming off of dieting and prepping, you are going to look at food differently because in your mind, you're thinking, I spent all this time dieting and eating these specific amounts of food. And if I increase those foods, then you're in the back of your mind, you're going to think to yourself, I'm immediately going to get fat and ruin what I look for, or ruined what I worked for, excuse me.
I'm currently going through something that is probably about 1/100th of what you've ever gone through with bodybuilding, just because like I said, I never compete, but I still try to look good. But for me, being a baseball player, the hardest thing for me to ever give up is sunflower seeds. I mean, I gotta have sunflower. I mean, I absolutely love, and then I know how bad they are for you, and I know how like high they are in salt and sugar. It's almost like smoking for me, honestly, where I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna quit, I'm gonna quit. But then next thing you know, I'm buying a huge thing of David's one night, when I get home from work, because I work nights, and then usually that's you go to like convenience stores because they're the only things that are open if you want to get food. But yeah, I mean, I still work out a lot, but yeah, I've been slowly weaning myself off of that. But just yeah, even now, like just the salt, I mean, you just get so used to it. But yeah, it can be so difficult to realize that food really isn't like a coping mechanism. So yeah, I'm currently going through that right now, and I need to get that summer bod back. So because being up in Minnesota, I always put on about 15 to 20 pounds of fat every winter, just because when it's
Yep.
negative 20 degrees outside, you are not going to survive being super lean. Well, you'll survive, but you will hate yourself, and you will hate, you'll walk outside swearing the entire time you walk out to your car, and it's just, yeah, it's not a fun thing. But two of the questions that I love to ask all of our health and fitness guests, for our first one, I mean, for me, there were so many positive things going to the gym and working out and getting, bigger and stronger. But one of the negative things are you're gonna get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're gonna get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next couple of months before I move out, and every time they come in with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carry in all the groceries. Has that been a similar experience with you, where people just take one look at you and just assume that you can do favors for them?
Oh my God, moving furniture. Moving furniture is the number one thing. At the last job I had before I moved to Rhode Island, um, it was a Massage Envy, and they had closed down one of their locations, and so they brought some of the nicer furniture to our location. And of course, I was the one who was volunteered to help move this heavy furniture. And I'm like, you guys, my muscles are really only for like looks, right? I was like messing around. I'm like, they don't actually work. They're just there for looks. But yeah, I would definitely say moving furniture. And then the other one is people always assume that I can kick other people's asses because I'm bigger.
That is one thing that I found out too. And another one was that, whenever I'd be at bars and you could like see a little bit of my arm, like there'd be girls that would just come up and just start feeling my arm without even asking. They'd be like, oh my God, like check out this guy or whatever, to like her friend. And let's be honest, I was vain back then. So I'd pump it up a little bit for them just to be like, oh yeah, that's nice, whatever. But yeah, just realizing that you basically become like a human art exhibit basically for like other people, where they're just like, oh,
And
that's the
arm
guy.
wrestling.
Yeah, that too. Yep.
Yeah.
All the time. And
Arm
I
wrestling.
always say to that, I always say, okay, if you really want to go and test like strength, let's go to the gym and have like a military press off or something like that. Like
Yeah.
if you really want to
Yeah.
test like true strength. But yeah, getting asked to arm wrestle, yeah, that is a huge one as well. But yeah, that whole furniture thing. I mean, every other weekend last year. I mean, also being, I always say it's a double edged sword being 6'3" too, because you could have zero muscle at all and you'd still get asked to like move stuff. You'd be like, oh yeah, tall guy can do it. Go and do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just it got to the point where I just realized, like, hey, they're recognizing that you do work out. So I mean, just take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, it's definitely one thing that I really, I really struggled with at first, but now I'm completely fine with. But now my favorite question to ask, and I think it's our audience favorite question, because I always say it's a multi-million-dollar idea for anyone out there who comes up with something. But when it comes to clothes for fit women, I mean, I always say fit men have their own problems. See, we get that reaction all the time. That's why I love asking this. But when it comes to clothes, I mean, I always say, like, if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of that are just not conducive to bodybuilding, because if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans aren't built for that. But what have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited?
I would definitely have to say dresses or dress shirts. That is like the hardest thing for me to find. So like let's say I want to wear like a t-shirt with like a denim long sleeve shirt over that. That is like the hardest thing, and I always have to find like the biggest size I can. But I do have to say, for the ladies out there who bodybuild or are in physique or have bigger legs with small waists like I do, the best jeans to buy are at American Eagle. It's the super stretch jeans. And you got to get the high waisted ones because then you really don't have to wear a belt with every pair of pants you wear. But yeah, I definitely have to say finding shirts that fit my shoulders and my biceps a lot better and not so tight so I can actually lift my arms up and not feel like I'm like
Yep.
I'm confined.
Yep, you got to make sure that you aren't ripping things. And again, I mean, we had two fashion guys come on, and I said to them, I said, like, hey, I've had so many guests come on where, get on that, because there's so many people that are looking for that. But yeah, if anyone has anything, I mean, I know there are people coming out with these clothing lines all the time, but just finding that can be such a difficulty. But I love to ask these last couple questions before we wrap things up. So if someone were to walk up to you and say, like, hey, Miranda, we made a decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Oh, hmm. That's difficult, but I would have to say different judges having their different ideas of what they're looking for. I mean, I know multiple people who have like, they kind of feel like they got gypped in their placing just because they're like, um, it's funny because I know a bikini competitor, and she just competed at the Arnold in the amateur level, and they were actually telling her that she should bump it up to figure, but like she doesn't. I'm not trying to be mean, but she doesn't have the build for figure, so it just kind of blew my mind that they were like suggesting because she came in so lean for bikini that they were saying that she should go to figure. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't feel like you have the size for figure and the way figure is developing. I definitely have to agree with what the judges are looking. It needs to be 100% across the board because it's like you could be going into a show be really lean and looking really good and it can hurt you, but yet if you go to a different show you're going to place and do well. It's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like they're just so bipolar, and they just got to have like maybe like a universal accepted standard
Yeah.
where just everyone can go to. But now, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
I would definitely say appreciate appreciate your body more. I would definitely say, don't sit there and complain that you're fat because 18-year-old me was not fat. I was as skinny as a rail and eating whatever I wanted. I would definitely say um, to just be more accepting of yourself, but continue going to the gym and doing this journey for you because at the end of the day, I do this for myself because I love seeing what I can develop and what I can change in just, what I would consider a short amount of time. I would definitely tell myself to do more competitions, not be scared and hold yourself back because you think you're not ready. Just go for it.
Yeah, and that's such an awesome thing. I mean, for me too, I would say, you're not gonna be able to please everyone, so just realize that not everyone's gonna dig your vibe. But now the two final questions of the podcast that I love to ask, all of the health and fitness guests as well. So if we were to talk to you a year from now, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding career? I mean, just in your personal life. What are some goals that you have? If we were to talk to you a year from today, you would like to be at?
In my personal life, I am definitely thinking of going to school to become an esthetician. I really would love to own my own business, kind of be my own boss, build up a clientele, help people in that way to make themselves feel better on the outside. Because obviously, when you look in the mirror and you see yourself on the outside, you are just going to feel a lot better on the inside as well. Um, I do like to make people feel good about themselves. So, you know, I don't necessarily want to have a job that's 100% structured around the gym. I have tried personal training before and helping people that way, but it just wasn't a good fit for me. So, personal life, I would really just like to be my own boss, start my own business, help people feel good about themselves, give them the correct information. And then I want to say, competitive wise, um, I definitely would like to have my pro card. I'm actually currently just starting prep to compete in North Americans in Pittsburgh at the end of August. So fingers crossed, we'll see what develops with that. But you got to try at some point.
Oh, and that's awesome, and we wish you nothing but the best of luck. And now, lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I definitely would like to give a shout out to my mom, Tracy Pryor. She's definitely my number one supporter, along with my grandmother. She's definitely probably thinking I'm crazy for doing what I'm doing and, wanting to be bigger or be dieting and not enjoy the Reese's peanut butter cups she's always wanting to offer me. But give a shout out to my grandmother and then also give a shout out to my boyfriend, Jason, and then my coach, Tavish. They're definitely my biggest supporters, and I definitely count on them a lot.
I mean, and that's so awesome. And again, everyone, go and give Miranda a follow. I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. And thank you again so much, Miranda, for coming on and sharing your story. I mean, it was great having you on. I love having, guests come on and share their stories because especially with Instagram, you're not really able to like meet the person and experience their
Yes.
backstory. So that's why I started doing this, especially with the bodybuilders, just so they can come on and, just make people realize, hey, they're just people too that may have,
Yeah.
a hell of a lot more dedication than I have. But just deep down, there's an average person. So again, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. And again, you guys, I will leave a link to all of her stuff down below. Go and give her a follow. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.